Hello, welcome to Human Existence from First Principles, Episode 1, Introduction. Okay, my name is Sol Soler, and I'm a philosopher and a theoretical physicist who works specifically on consciousness. And this is a series of short podcasts or lectures or whatever you want to call them, talking about human existence from first principles. Okay, this is episode 1, introduction, brief introduction to the series. So each episode should be around 10 to 20 minutes long, keep them very short, and each episode will be strictly confined to one topic. So let me give you an example. Episode 2 is entitled Consciousness is Primary. So in episode 2, I'll spend 10 or 20 minutes proving that when it comes to human existence and our understanding of human existence and our knowledge of human existence, I'll spend 10 or 20 minutes showing that consciousness or conscious experience is primary, is the most fundamental thing. As in, you can't learn any physics or philosophy or anything like that without being conscious. Anyway, we'll see about that in lecture 2. But yeah, each episode will be confined to one topic. And we want to build a logical model, scientific, philosophical, linguistic model of human existence from first principles. What does from first principles mean? It just means based on the most basic, most fundamental, and most undoubtable basic propositions that you can construct or that you can ascertain. So it'll be quite like mathematics, where in mathematics you have axioms, or in science you have postulates. And the word axiom and the word postulate are actually just fancy words for the English word assumptions. To build any sort of model, mathematical model, or any scientific model of reality, you actually necessarily need to make some assumptions. As in, you say, this particular proposition, we're just going to take it for granted, take that it's true, and then build a model based on top of these most basic assumptions. Now, these assumptions can still be doubted, and you could use a different set of assumptions. So these assumptions are never absolute, but what you do is you try and pick the most basic, most fundamental, most blatantly obvious assumptions that you can possibly construct. And then if you can trust your postulates, if you can trust your assumptions, if you believe in them, then you can believe in any of the results that you derive using the model that you've constructed based on your postulates. Okay, so that's what from first principles means. So let's now examine a basic postulate that we're going to work with. So, because we can doubt anything. We can doubt that there's not a proposition that isn't that can't be doubted to some extent. For example, the French philosopher René Descartes said, "Cogito ergo sum," I think, therefore I am. And he considered that an undoubtable proposition. He thought that was a totally undoubtable philosophical proposition. But ever since he made that proposition, many philosophers have spent a lot of time doubting that proposition and poking holes in that proposition and showing that it can be doubted. But let me give an example of a proposition that we're going to use. So I claim to you that I am a singular, individual, conscious human being. Okay? And I'm going to take it for granted. I'm going to take it as an assumption, as a postulate, that my audience, whoever they happen to be, each one of them is also a separate, individual, conscious human being. So basically I'm saying that all humans on the planet are individual, separate conscious human beings, as in you're having your individual conscious experience and I'm having my individual conscious experience, and those conscious experiences are not identical. If our conscious experience was identical, then I wouldn't need to say all this, because you'd think it at exactly the same time that I think it. Okay. But even saying that the Earth is populated with separate individual conscious human beings can be doubted. We can doubt it by saying things like maybe you're in a matrix, and maybe all the people around you are just programs in that matrix and don't really exist. Or if not a matrix, a brain in a jar. Before the Matrix movie, philosophers used to talk about brains in jars, but the philosophical ideas were the same as in the Matrix. You don't know, for example, if all your friends and family are real. They could be figments of your imagination. You could be hallucinating. However, on a day-to-day basis, and especially when you're interacting with them, I think that intuitively within yourself, you do believe that your mom or your dad or your brother or your wife or your husband or whoever, your dog, you do believe that they are separate conscious individuals, similar to how you are a separate conscious individual. So I want this lecture series to be quite practical, and I want it to be scientific, rigorously scientific. So whilst these things are capable of being doubted, I think it's very reasonable, if we're trying to analyze human existence, to take for granted that separate individual conscious human beings exist. Because, well, I mean, the existence of all of human society and all of human knowledge is predicated on the existence of individual humans having separate individual conscious experience. So, for example, Isaac Newton had the separate individual conscious experiences that led him to define the law of gravity and his 3 laws of motion, for example. And then he shared them with other individual conscious human beings. Okay, so that was just a quick word on doubt, just to set the tone, because I know, I just preempting philosophers that will be in the comments, doubting different propositions and stuff that I make. But I want this to be quite practical and what's the word? Sorry, I've forgotten the word that I want. Accessible to people who aren't technical philosophers, just human beings that want to understand what it is to exist as a human being on the most fundamental level, the most logical and undoubtable level. So yeah, whilst it's possible to doubt the idea that there are 8 billion individual human beings living on the earth, it's kind of harder to doubt a fact like that than to believe it. You can doubt that the earth is round. You can make a logical scientific case that the earth is flat, but it is so contrary to the rest of our body of human scientific and philosophical understanding that it's very, very difficult to maintain. It takes a lot of mental gymnastics to kind of reconcile the idea of the earth being flat with all the rest of our scientific understanding. Okay, so that was just a quick word on doubt. Yeah, so that's it. That's an introduction. So as I said, episode 2 will be entitled Consciousness is Primary. Conscious experience is primary to all experience, and conscious experience is primary to all knowledge. We'll discuss that in episode 2. So yeah, what can we take away from this introductory episode is that I am claiming to you that I am a singular individual conscious human. I'm assuming that you are a singular individual conscious human, and we want to understand as deeply as possible what that means based on our scientific understanding of the universe to date. Okay, so that's it. Was there anything else I wanted to say? You can doubt anything. Okay, yeah. So I mentioned René Descartes. This is the last thing I'll leave you with. An interesting philosophical idea. René Descartes, the French philosopher, said, "Cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. Very famous, probably the most famous philosophical statement. I think, therefore I am. And he put that forward. He claimed that that was an indubitable philosophical fact, that it couldn't be doubted at all. That as long as he was thinking, he existed. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good effort at an indubitable philosophical fact. But since then, many philosophers have doubted that fact. Which just, goes to show you can doubt anything if you put your mind to it. But here's my effort at an indubitable, undoubtable philosophical fact. So I think it's undoubtable to say that nothingness is not the case. Whatever we are, whatever you are, whatever this universe is, whatever its true nature, whatever its mechanics, me existing right now, having this experience, and you existing right now, having whatever experience you're having, is definitely not nothingness. So I think we can say with total certainty that nothingness is definitely not the case. Our universe destroys nothingness by existing. So there's an example of an indubitable fact. And one thing we have to remember is that we are humans. And that's a very important thing to remember, especially when you compare the size of your head, the size of your brain, with the size of the universe. So the universe is very, very, very immense. And in comparison, your brain is very, very tiny. Which is enough to show us really that our knowledge of the universe will always be provisional. It will never be definite and absolute. Now, some people may claim to have achieved absolute knowledge. Maybe they have. I'm always deeply suspicious of these people. But if they do achieve absolute knowledge, they achieve it privately. They aren't able to just suddenly, they aren't able to explain that absolute knowledge to other people around them who still remain curious. But yeah, I think, judging by the size of our brain, its computational abilities, its comprehensive abilities, the idea that it could understand the entirety of the universe surrounding it, including its own existence, with any sort of certainty is just ridiculous. So yeah, we're going to do the best that we can in understanding our existence, whilst acknowledging our limitations and trying not to jump to any crazy conclusions. Like some people, philosophers often jump to crazy conclusions like we are all one. You hear that a lot when you discuss consciousness and philosophy. And it's kind of just blatantly not true, because you're having a different conscious experience to me right now, which immediately proves that we're not all one. If we were all one, I wouldn't need to say any of this, because you'd have the ideas at exactly the same time that I had them. Okay. So that's it. Yeah, we're going to try and give a practical, scientific, linguistic model of human existence. Keep it as basic as possible. Try not to jump to any conclusions. Try and clearly define what we can say, the propositions that we can trust most and rely on most to build up our model. And then episode by episode, we'll build up our model of human existence. And hopefully it will be very interesting and give you some philosophical and scientific insight into what you are as a human being. Okay, so check out episode 2, where we discuss and prove the proposition that consciousness is primary. Conscious experience is primary. Okay, thanks for listening. See you in episode 2. Take care, all the best.